Good morning and good afternoon and good evening, everyone. And particularly would like to say to my 中方的朋友们，早上好。我知道现在比较早在北京，所以非常高兴你们能参加今天的活动。So I really wanted to just greet everyone and welcome you to this 2022 U.S. China Agricultural Roundtable. I think all of you know that this annual event is presented and organized by the U.S. Heartland China Association in partnership with the Chinese People's Association for Friendship with Foreign Countries, the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, and the China Agricultural University. And this has become an important event and platform for dialogue between the United States and China on questions of substance and importance to the people in both countries. And I would like to underscore that at this moment in global history, this kind of dialogue, this kind of discussion is more important than ever. And this is one reason why the Ford Foundation is a proud supporter of this event and of the U.S. Heartland China Association in general. I don't want to take a lot of time in the introductions because I think there's a lot of really important things and people that we want to hear from. I do want to take a moment to let you all know who will be speaking today and who is with us. And from the Chinese side, I want to introduce Ambassador Lin Songtian, who is the president of the Chinese People's Association for Friendship with Foreign Countries, and also now a friend of mine and of the Heartland Association. I want to also say that Ambassador Qin Gang, who has been extremely busy these days, will be sending us a recorded message. So we're very grateful for that. I also want to introduce Ni Pin, who is the president of the China General Chamber of Commerce in Chicago, and also really want to welcome the provincial departments of agriculture and rural affairs from both Hubei and Henan provinces, which are two incredibly important agricultural provinces in China. So I really look forward to hearing from them as well. And on the US side, I will share who's with us. So Governor Bob Holden, who is the chairman and CEO of the U.S. Heartland China Association. Ambassador Kenneth Quinn, who's president emeritus of the World Food Prize and also an advisor to the Heartland Association. David Mealy, who is the charge d'affaires at the U.S. Embassy based in Beijing. Jason Havermeister, the acting deputy undersecretary of state for the U.S. government. Krista Hardin, CEO of U.S. Dairy Export Council. We'll also have recorded remarks from Darren Lahood of Illinois. And we have Jim Sutter, CEO of the U.S. Soybean Export Council. Eric Frywald, CEO of Syngenta Group. Blaine Arthur, who's the Secretary of Agriculture of the state of Oklahoma. And Mike Beam, the Secretary of Agriculture from the state of Kansas. So I really think you can hear from this list the wide variety of expertise and knowledge and commitment to questions of agriculture and the importance of agriculture in the daily lives of the citizens in China and the United States. I really look forward to hearing from everyone. And it's my pleasure at this moment to pass the baton to Governor Holden, who the former governor of Missouri, had the vision and the passion to establish the U.S. Heartland China Association and is the chairman and CEO, and also has become a good friend of mine as well. So I just want to hand this over to Governor Holden to kick us off with some opening remarks. Governor Holden.
Thank you, Director Elizabeth Knupp, for your kind words and the introduction. I also want to thank the Ford Foundation for supporting this U.S.-China Agriculture Roundtable. That's so important. And dear honored guests and friends, it's a privilege and an honor to welcome all of you. Once again, during the National Agriculture Week here in the United States, and in honor of the three agricultural scientists who made significant contributions to our world, Norman Borlaug, Yuan Longping, and George Washington Carver, we are gathered here to celebrate and advance agricultural collaboration between the United States and China. While I am, of course, aware of the significant issues that currently encumber the bilateral relationship between our two countries, at the same time, leaders of both of our countries have made their commitment for finding areas of cooperation clear. It is even more urgent today following the meeting between President Biden and President Xi. When we launched the first Ag Roundtable a year ago, in the middle of the pandemic and at a time of significant transition and turmoil in our country, I would be less than candid if I didn't say I was more than a little apprehensive over what our future held. Still, I was encouraged to see that there was a broad bipartisan U.S. support for and participation in our Agriculture Roundtable in 2021. This was based on a common perception of the importance of increased agriculture exports from the American heartland to China. 1 year after our first Ag Roundtable, witness how much the world has changed. While I am pleased by the resilience of our nations demonstrated in dealing with the ongoing global pandemic, I am saddened to see our world in even more turmoil, and the conflict between Ukraine and Russia threatens to engulf the entire world if it's not stopped soon. But despair is not an option. It might seem that there remains a great gulf of misunderstanding between our nations. However, I am encouraged to see that President Biden and President Xi maintain regular dialogue, and their recent meeting demonstrated a shared commitment to see conflict resolved peacefully. We all come from a vastly different background and beliefs, but we share a common goal in helping guide our world towards a better and more productive future. For our planet to survive, we must have open dialogue, common purpose, and wise leadership from every country in the years ahead. At the U.S. Heartland China Association, as my highly valued strategic advisor, Ambassador Kenneth Quinn, has talked about, we have a belief that we must work together. Our belief is that the United States and China cooperation is essential if our planet will be able to successfully deal with the following three most critical global challenges: sustainability, producing enough nutritious food to feed the growing population on the planet; countering the impact of climate change, especially on agricultural production; and preventing future pandemics of human, animal, and plant diseases. At the same time, to meet these challenges, it is essential that we have peace in the world, and particularly peace between the United States and China. In that regard, we strongly believe, as Dr. Borlaug demonstrated, that one of the best ways that peace can be attained is through agriculture cooperation. Peace through agriculture is the mission we have. Spring has again returned to the American heartland, where many of our top agricultural states are located, and our farmers are getting ready for a new planting season. Let me remind all of us, we will reap what we sow this season, and this is a season for planting peace in our world. In this mission, we cannot fail. With the people here today, I'm confident we will succeed.
Thank you, Governor Holden. Those were really moving and important remarks to open this session. Just underscoring that the idea of planting peace, I think, is a beautiful metaphor for what it is that we're trying to do through this dialogue, and what the U.S. Heartland China Association seeks to do with its work, and what the Chinese People's Association for Friendship with Foreign Countries seeks to do with their work. So I do agree with you that the people around this table are highly aligned. And I do think that agriculture is a very important topic at the moment, given the impact of the conflict in Ukraine on global agricultural output, and the looming food insecurity challenges that are going to be facing a lot of the world in the coming years. So I think that makes it even more important that China and the United States talk together and try to find ways forward to help address both peace and food security and sustainability issues. So with that, I would like to now welcome Ambassador Lin Songtian, who, as I said, is the president of the Chinese People's Association for Friendship with Foreign Countries and a former ambassador to multiple countries on the African continent, a seasoned diplomat, a brilliant speaker of English. I don't know if he'll speak in English or Chinese, but I really want to welcome him to make his opening remarks. Ambassador Lin, over to you.
谢谢倩倩，尊敬的活动主席、奎恩大使、中美两国高级外交官、各位中美在线嘉宾朋友，大家好！欢迎大家出席由中国人民对外友好协会和美国福利中国协会共同举办的2022年中美农业圆桌论坛开幕式。去年3月，首届中美农业论坛圆桌论坛成功举办，受到两国地方企业、高校、智库等各界朋友的热烈欢迎，也为我们继续办好这一重要论坛提供了强劲动力。春天是播撒希望种子的季节。上星期五，习近平主席与拜登总统进行了坦诚、建设性的视频对通话。今天我们举办新一届论坛，恰逢其时，希望论坛能为当下寒气逼人的中美关系带来一股春天的暖流，助力春回大地。在此，我要特别感谢活动主席奎恩大使和美国福利中国协会各位朋友，以及中方的同事为本次论坛成功举办所付出的不懈努力。不久前，我们在上海隆重举办了《上海公报》发表50周年系列纪念活动，得到中美双方与会人士一致肯定。纪念活动的成功举办，让我获得了3点启示，我愿意借此机会与大家分享。一是中美人民向来友好，维护和发展两国友好合作关系，符合两国和两国人民的共同利益。建交以来，中美之间已建立起50对友好省州和233对友好城市关系。新冠肺炎疫情发生之前，每周有3000多个航班往来于中美之间，每年有500多万人次跨越大洋两岸。两国经贸关系更是从无到有。2021年，双边贸易额达到超过7500亿美元，双向投资超过2400亿美元，支撑了美国260万个就业岗位。去年，尽管国际地缘政治和双边关系持续恶化，但中美经贸合作依然强劲，双边货物贸易总值逆势增长28.7%，其中中国自美进口农产品约占美国农产品出口总额的1/5，成为美国农产品最大的进口国。二是中美只要秉持相互尊重、求同存异的原则，完全可以和平共处、共同发展。中美社会制度、历史文化、意识形态等过去不同，现在不同，未来也依然不同。但是过去50年的中美关系现实表明，两国完全可以相互尊重、和平共处、共同发展。三是中美交流合作互有需要，优势互补，合作潜力巨大，前景可期。美国拥有高科技、金融、人才等3大优势，或者都是绝对优势。中国拥有超大型市场和强劲国内消费需求。2021年， 中国农产品进口总额已接近2200亿美元，成为世界第一大农产品进口国。美国农业高度发达，是世界上最大的农产品出口国之一。中国正致力实现14亿多人民共同富裕的目标。中国人民对美好生活的需求与美国优质农产品的供给相遇，将为美国农民提供巨大的发展机遇，为中美合作提供无限的合作空间。希望各位朋友能以本次论坛为契机，坦诚交流，并找到两国在农产品进出口、跨境电商、绿色农业、农业科技创新等领域互利合作的潜力，深化彼此合作和互信，为中美关系健康稳定发展做出积极贡献。本会愿同各位朋友共同努力，为促进中美，特别是中国和美国福地地区交流合作，搭建更多平台，促进双方经贸、人文、有成、议会等领域的交流合作。期待疫情早日远离，我们能面对面交流，形成更多共识，促进更多合作，一起向未来。预祝本届论坛圆满成功，谢谢大家。
Thank you very much, Ambassador Lin, for those remarks. Again, also using a metaphor of planting seeds, seeds of peace and seeds of cooperation was a beautiful metaphor. And also thank you for describing the depth and the breadth of the relationship between the United States and China, the complementarity between our two countries, and the what you called unlimited space for collaboration and cooperation. I really appreciate that insight and those remarks. So thank you very much. And so this is the conclusion of the opening remarks of this celebration today. And now we're going to move into the keynote addresses. And with that, I want to hand over the baton to Ambassador Kenneth Quinn, who, as I mentioned at the beginning, is the President Emeritus of the World Food Prize and also is an important advisor to the U.S. Heartland China Association and a longtime supporter of this roundtable. And so with that, I would like to pass the baton over to Ambassador Quinn. Ambassador Quinn?
Yes. Well, thank you, Elizabeth, for your wonderful role in opening. And I don't know how I'm going to follow the beautiful Chinese that you spoke. The best I can say is that behind me is, I'm speaking to you from Des Moines, Iowa, and behind me is a beautiful pavilion at the Governor Robert D. Ray Asian Garden along the Des Moines River in the heart of the capital of the state of Iowa. And when I retired from the State Department after being U.S. Ambassador to Cambodia, and I came home to Iowa, I was on the board of the organization that raised the money and built this Asian garden. And this wonderful pavilion was constructed in Beijing and shipped here and becomes, in fact, a symbol of the type of Chinese-American collaboration we want to have. The Heartland China Association covers 20 states, and each of them has its own unique and special connection to China. However, this pavilion and this garden sits at a place where there is an amazing confluence of events and experiences that provide a foundation to the relationship, and particularly the agricultural relationship. Where you stand there in the pavilion, turn to the north and look about 200 meters, there's the Des Moines Botanical Garden, where in 1980, as I escorted him, the governor of Guangdong province, Governor Xi Jinping, the father of President Xi Jinping, was here as the first delegation of Chinese governors coming to the United States after establishing diplomatic relations. And if you turn to the south, and look about 300 meters down the river, there is the Dr. Norman Borlaug World Food Prize Hall of Laureates that honors Professor Yuan Longping and George Washington Carver, but was the site on February 16, 2012, for the U.S.-China High-Level Agricultural Symposium, at which then Vice President Xi Jinping gave the keynote address, at which then Secretary of Agriculture Tom Vilsack and Chinese Minister of Agriculture Han Changpu signed a memorandum of strategic cooperation in agriculture and $3.5 billion in contracts for the export of US soybeans to China were signed, all at the same place on that same day. And this, to me, represented one of the true high points in the US-China relationship. In my 40 years of traveling to China, interacting with Chinese diplomats, I've come to see that their diplomatic corps, their ambassadors, I've met 2 or 3 ambassadors, even here in Des Moines, are at the very highest level of performance and professionalism. But I hadn't met Ambassador Qin Gang, but in looking at his background as Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs, spokesman for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, I was certain that he would follow in exactly that same pattern and with that same type of professionalism. But then I had an amazing opportunity to meet him and interact with him. For after he presented his credentials at the State Department, the very first Americans with whom he met publicly were 2 individuals from here in the heartland and from here in Iowa. One was Sarah Landy, the wonderful woman from Muscatine, Iowa, who was a host for President Xi Jinping when, as a 31-year-old party secretary at a county level, he came to America. And the other was me. And Ambassador Qin Gang spent about an hour and sharing stories, and we talked about how agriculture was a bedrock of the relationship. And Sarah Landy and I told him the stories about President Xi and his father and Yuan Longping all coming to Iowa. And at the end of the conversation, I said to Ambassador Qin Gang, so we're going to be having our second agricultural roundtable next March, and very much hope that you'll be able to attend either in person or virtually and to participate in it. And so I'm so very pleased and very honored and privileged to introduce Ambassador Qin Gang.
We will have his pre-recorded remarks played.
Ladies and gentlemen, friends, I would like to send warm congratulations to the opening of China-US Agriculture Roundtable. I also express my thanks to the Chinese People's Association for Friendship with Foreign Countries and the U.S. Heartland China Association for your long-standing efforts for the subnational cooperation and friendly exchanges between China and the U.S. Both China and the U.S. are major agricultural producers and consumers. The U.S. is also the world's largest exporter of agricultural products, while China is the biggest importer. As a highlight of China-U.S. pragmatic cooperation, agricultural cooperation is well-grounded and highly complementary between our 2 countries. Since the Phase 1 trade deal was signed in 2020, China has been faithfully fulfilling the agricultural procurement commitment. As a result, our agricultural trade registered a quick comeback from the pandemic and the trade frictions, and rose to $47 billion in 2021, with China's imports reaching $39 billion, up by 64% year on year. China now takes up 1/5 of US agricultural products, more than any other country or region, enabling America's record-breaking agricultural exports last year. On average, each American farmer exported more than $11,000 of agricultural products to China. Agricultural cooperation best explains the win-win nature of our economic and trade relations. It also speaks to our highly complementary economic structures and the deeply intertwined interests. Ladies and gentlemen, agriculture is an important part of the friendly cooperation between China and the US. As our agricultural production increasingly faced the restraints from population, resources, and the environment, the COVID-19 and the climate change poses new challenges to global food security. Deeper agricultural cooperation will not only benefit both countries' agriculture and the people, but also carry strong significance to global food security and agricultural development. As the Chinese saying goes, the whole year's work depends on a good start in spring. As we fully embrace the spring, I hope you will take today's opportunity to share ideas on the innovative development and win-win cooperation of agriculture, so as to find new opportunities and inject new impetus to the sound and stable development of China-US relations. Thank you.
Well, I'm so very, very pleased that the ambassador accepted our invitation and offered those remarks. I have also expressed my hope that he could come and visit in person to the heartland, and of course would be delighted to help welcome him here to Des Moines and Iowa. As I mentioned about the Chinese diplomatic service, I spent 32 years as an American Foreign Service officer, almost all of it working in the East Asia and Pacific Bureau. And so I had the opportunity to interact with and have as my colleagues the officers who are in what we called the China service, those who become expert in China, learn the language, and blend all of their foreign service experiences together. And it was always understood that the very best officers in the American diplomatic service could be found in the China service. Stapleton Roy, Arthur Hummel served as ambassador in Beijing. Chaz Freeman, one of the true and most insightful analysts, all were colleagues of mine. And I am therefore so very pleased that we have the Charge d'Affaires, who is from that service and represents that same level of excellence in diplomacy with us this evening. Ambassador Designate Nicholas Burns, also a very good friend, has not been able to present his credentials yet due to the COVID situation. So we're so very, very pleased to have Charge David Mealy with us for his remarks. Mr. Charge.
Good morning, everybody from Beijing. Ambassador Quinn, it's my particular honor to be introduced by you. I'm sure that you recall my last position before I came here to China was Deputy Assistant Secretary for Trade at the State Department, where I worked with you directly, and we had a wonderful World Food Prize ceremony on the 7th floor to honor the nominees one year. And I value the memory of working with you, and it's nice to see you this morning. Let me also acknowledge other distinguished speakers today, Governor Holden, of course, you, Ambassador Quinn, Ambassador Lin Songtian, Ambassador Qin Gang, Acting Deputy Undersecretary Jason Halfmeister, and the others who have joined us. And Ambassador Quinn, as you mentioned, we do have Ambassador Burns on the ground here in Beijing, and we're looking forward to him and his wife, Libby, soon getting out of quarantine, and they will shortly join our embassy. Before I get started on my remarks, I just want to make two comments. First, there has been a terrible plane crash here. There have been 132 people presumed to have perished in Guangxi province. And so far, we're not aware of any American citizens, but I do want to express my condolences to the Chinese people and just take note of this tragic event. Second, I want to acknowledge what is happening in Ukraine, a country where I've served as a diplomat. I was there for the Maidan situation. In addition to the human toll of so many lives needlessly lost, we in the United States are deeply concerned about the impact that Russia's continued invasion of Ukraine will have on global food security and on the agricultural sector and the supply chain. We are working with trading partners to continually monitor for potential disruptions so that adequate food supplies are available to meet the nutritional needs of populations across the globe. And as we look for ways to work constructively together, I want to say a few words about the remarkable contributions that American farmers and ranchers have made in China over the last 40 years. Cooperators are nonprofit trade associations representing American farmers and ranchers have been present and investing in China for nearly 4 decades. They have shown a multi-decade commitment that not only looks to support US trade with China, but also to develop Chinese industry and agricultural capacity on areas of common interest. They have supported the growth of China's retail, food service, and food processing by providing safe, high-quality products for Chinese consumers. While we recognize that the US-China relationship is complicated, maintaining a constructive relationship on agriculture is critical for the overall bilateral ties. To do so, consistency is critical. We want to be a reliable supplier of high-quality agricultural products to China. But we need a reliable support environment for the customers that we do business with. That means adhering to rules-based trade standards and implementing the least trade restrictive measures possible to support the smooth flow of goods between markets. We have made progress in this area, but there are a number of long-standing issues that must be resolved. Just one example is that the PRC continues to restrict the US seed industry from investing in agricultural biotechnology and operating in various conventional and biotech seed businesses in China. I would also like to talk about the US commitment to the relationship and to cooperation. Over the last 2 decades, we have sent over 800 food and agricultural industry and regulatory leaders from across Chinese society to train in the United States and take part in information exchanges through USDA's Cochrane program. There have been decades of bilateral agricultural exchanges between the PRC's Ministry of Agricultural and Rural Affairs and USDA through the Scientific Exchange Program. This was part of the US and China Science and Technology Agreement signed in 1979 by President Carter and Premier Deng Xiaoping. There is cooperation on important topics such as generating agricultural statistics, the role of commodity markets, childhood and school nutrition, as well as current environmental and climate-related fields working on soil health, methane reduction, and climate-smart agriculture. There are current efforts by Secretary Vilsack and Mara Minister Tang to engage on climate-related and food security issues like the restoration and protection of Black soils and efforts to prevent food loss and waste. In light of the commitment and cooperation, we feel it is important to note that we have seen improvements in some areas and we have seen US exports increase. We continue to pursue bilateral engagement with the PRC, and we are seeking to find areas where progress can be achieved. China is an important trading partner, and every avenue for improving the economic and trade environment must be utilized. That said, there are a number of long-standing structural issues that still have not been resolved on important matters like biotechnology, the development of risk assessments for veterinary drugs, and China's rice classification standard. While things have at times become more difficult in the relationship, there are areas where we can establish greater trust. It is important that our agricultural stakeholders can continue doing their good work. One common interest we share is in combating the climate crisis. And we've spoken this morning of sustainability, preventing pandemics, and climate change. And I want to add to that discussion. The United States is looking for greater ambition on climate action from governments around the world, including the PRC. And the steps that the PRC takes over what we are calling this decisive decade and into the future are essential to delivering on the temperature goals of the Paris Agreement. Significantly enhanced action from the PRC, the world's largest emitter of greenhouse gases, is necessary to holding the global average temperature increase to well below 2 degrees Celsius and to pursue efforts to limit it to 1.5 degrees Celsius. The US-China Joint Glasgow Declaration announced at COP26 outlines various technical areas where the US and China can work together to drastically reduce greenhouse gas emissions in this decade. First, the US and China agreed to collaborate on deforestation through effective enforcement to ban illegal imports. This is an area where strong PRC action to take greater responsibility for China's global environmental impacts can have immediate and important benefits to the global community. Second, the US and China committed to increased action to abate harmful methane emissions. We see the agricultural component of the joint declaration as critical to reaping the benefits of reduced methane emissions, one of the fastest ways to slow the impacts of climate change before 2050. Agriculture contributes around 40% of global methane emissions, mostly from livestock and rice production. USDA estimates China's beef and dairy cattle population at 95 million head and its rice production at 148 million metric tons, making it the world's third largest producer, respectively. World's third largest and largest producer, respectively. Therefore, engaging China on methane emissions in the agricultural sector is critical to meeting the commitments of the joint declaration. The U.S. Embassy has an outstanding request to meet with the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Affairs on these issues, and we hope those discussions will begin soon. The truth is that our two nations share a lot of common goals when it comes to agriculture. I encourage everyone with a stake in agriculture to work constructively to help keep it as a bright spot in the relationship, to work together to address the challenges ahead. Thank you, everyone.
Well, thank you so very much, Chargé, and thank you so much for recalling our work together and having a World Food Prize laureate announcement on the 8th floor of the State Department. This coming Thursday is the 108th anniversary of the birth of Dr. Norman Borlaug. And I know he felt a great debt of gratitude to everyone at the State Department who made that announcement possible and brought such attention to our award, known as the Nobel Prize for Food and Agriculture. And the very first one in 2004, I announced that Professor Yuan Longping would be receiving the World Food Prize. So there's, again, one more example of this marvelous intersection, particularly around agriculture. Thank you so very much. And please give my very best, our very best, to Ambassador Burns and his family. Now, to follow on that wonderful outline and presentation, we have Deputy Undersecretary of Agriculture, Jason Hafmeister, with us today. I was speaking about the Foreign Service at the State Department, but there is also, perhaps gets lesser attention, but certainly deserves as much, the Foreign Agricultural Service. These are commissioned officers who are stationed at our embassies around the world and promote agricultural exports and keep our country safe by monitoring the shipment and sales and exports and imports of agricultural products. Secretary Hafmeister works closely with Secretary Vilsack, has been at USDA, had initial tour there in the early 90s, and then was in the private sector, came back in 2013, and has an amazing command of all the statistics associated with our agricultural relationship between our two countries. So it's my pleasure to introduce Deputy Undersecretary Jason Hafmeister.
Great, thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador, and my greetings to the participants in the conference. I appreciate the opportunity to share this time with you and talk about one of the most important relationships in global agriculture, the US-China relationship. It has important commercial implications, and even more importantly, maybe, how the United States and China work together to face the challenges of feeding the world sustainably may be the most deciding factor of how our planet takes on the challenges of sustainable agricultural production. So I want to make a few comments. They will amplify the outline that Chargé d'Affaires Mili made. He made a very comprehensive presentation about the many facets in the US-China agriculture relationship, but let me take a chance to go deeper on just a couple of particularly important matters. First, let me talk a little bit about the commercial relationship and what strong trade ties currently link the United States and China. China is our largest market for agricultural products. We exported $33 billion last year, a number that can be compared to the $38 billion that Ambassador Chin mentioned were imported under the Phase 1 agreement by China in 2021. This is a big increase from the pre-trade war export performance when we exported $25 billion, and much better than the depths of the trade war when our exports were down around $10 billion. So China is back where it belongs, leading our exports, and we have great optimism that we can do even better there. My own forecast is if we can stay on track with the market staying open and China continuing to reform some of its restrictive practices, this in the short term will be a $50 billion market. We see particular opportunities in ethanol, where not only are we restricted by Chinese tariffs, but there is great importance for the use of this renewable fuel to address environmental challenges. We see great opportunities in the grain sector, where not only is the United States a world-beating exporter, and China has great needs to rationalize its import system to more sustainably feed its people, but through reducing barriers such as high tariffs on grains and unjustified anti-dumping and countervailing duties on dried distillers grains, we could see significant new exports. And finally, in the livestock products area, while we have had booming trade there in the last couple of years, there are still restrictions on US exports, things like tariffs, things like some veterinary drug restrictions that need to be reformed. So reforms in these areas to go along with a general opening of the market and increasing demand in China promise great opportunity for US producers and Chinese consumers. And as interesting, there's great rationalization of allowing the United States, which has such abandoned land, such fertile production for row crops, such tremendous competitiveness in temperate fruits and vegetables, and a powerful livestock industry to allow China to rationalize its production and source globally in the name of sustainable environmentalism. Now, there are some lessons from when things go wrong from the tariff actions in the last few years. The United States, went into the tariff actions with about a 20% market share in China's import market for agricultural products. It fell to about to 10% at the nadir of the relationship and is climbing back. But we think we can do better, particularly if barriers are reduced, but we certainly know the sting of losing our customers in China. Similarly, you can see it in our export performance, where exports were $28 billion before the trade war. They fell to 10 billion, and now we're tracking above 30. So there certainly is a lesson there that when restrictions are placed on US exports, US farmers get lower prices, and Chinese consumers pay higher prices since they are forced to choose from other suppliers. So these are things that don't do either of us very well. So, China is just a great opportunity for us. It's the biggest market for pork and corn and cotton and soybeans and sorghum and hay and hides and skins. Currently, it's our second biggest market for poultry and tree nuts, and the third biggest market for beef and dairy and wheat and peanuts. So it's certainly great. Chinese customers are great and valued partners for us in this trade, and we look to further commercial opportunities. But our relationship is not just based on commercial ties. The global environmental challenges that we face will be decisively addressed if the United States and China can come together on identifying institutional approaches that will allow farmers to improve their production practices, to increase their production while reducing the amount of inputs that they use. This sustainable intensification we know is critical to addressing emissions associated with climate change, increasing the sequestration of carbon through the production process, and generally rationalizing the contribution that agriculture makes to the emissions of global warming gases. Now, at the core of addressing these climate change is first research and understanding, and it's important that our two sides continue to find ways to talk on common interest and share information that we may all benefit from better practices. But probably more importantly is how we develop a market for climate smart commodities, how we can create a system where there is demand for farmers who are producing farm goods in a way that is more caring of the climate effect, farmers who have lower emissions, farmers whose crops are sequestering carbon, farmers who are raising animals who are emitting less methane. Creating these kinds of markets for climate smart commodities really relies on two things. First is a science-based regulatory environment so that government regulations on what is permitted to be sold in the market and traded across borders is based on scientific evidence and based on the data-driven analysis of the safety of the individual products. Secondly, it's based on the open market. We know that entrepreneurs will not make the investments in the innovations that are needed to improve our productivity if they cannot sell to farmers who would use these new production processes, new genetic traits, new chemicals that are formulated better, new management practices. These will only be adopted if farmers believe that they can sell their products in the international market. And given the United States' role as an exporter and China's role as an importer, it's critical that we create a market that is not restricted so that we can develop and adopt these new technologies. And no two countries have a bigger role in this than the United States and China. And finally, in conclusion, it's not just commerce, it's not just sustainability and environmental protection, but it's also about global strengthening the institutions that govern trade and scientific standards. We have a shared interest in a rules-based, market-oriented system that will not only deliver economic growth and greater opportunities for citizens in both countries, but this system, which is fundamentally liberal in its intent, needs to stand up in contrast to the bullying of the wreckers and the spoilers who will use arbitrary and authoritarian measures to try and get their way. This is, I think, critical for us to address our commercial needs and deliver on our sustainability responses. So thank you for your time today. I hope that you have a successful conference, and I appreciate the invitation.
So thank you so very, very much for those remarks, Deputy Undersecretary Hafmeister. It's wonderful to have you with us. I take great hope for the future based on the fact that both China and the United States have this core of professional civil servants, foreign service officers, agricultural experts who have this vision and can work together. Please give Secretary Vilsack, former governor of Iowa, of course, our very best wishes. Now, the political side of the governance and this equation is also very important. And therefore, as I'm very pleased to be able to introduce our last speaker, Congressman Darren Lahood, who represents a 18th congressional district in central Illinois. And by chance, he represents a district where, before I moved to Iowa, I lived in Bloomington, Illinois. So I feel a little connection to him. And then I found out he graduated from the same college that I did in Dubuque, Iowa, Loras College. So even though we haven't met, I'm very pleased to introduce to our conference and symposium Congressman Darren Lahood for his pre-recorded remarks.
Hello, I'm Congressman Darren Lahood. For those of you that may not know, I represent the 18th District of Illinois, which includes 19 counties across central and west central Illinois. I'd like to thank the United States Heartland China Association for the invitation to speak to you today. In the U.S. House of Representatives, I serve on the Ways and Means Committee, the oldest committee in the House. Ways and Means has jurisdiction over tax, trade, and healthcare policy, among other issues. I also serve on the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. Since 2016, I have been a proud co-chair of the bipartisan U.S.-China Working Group, along with Congressman Rick Larsen from Washington State. Our group works to provide a platform in Congress for discussion on U.S.-China relations. We work to educate members of Congress and their staff on related policy matters by consulting with academia, think tanks, the business community, and government officials. I'm also proud of the appointment by House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy to serve on the Republican China Task Force for the 117th Congress. The task force authored a report last year that outlined areas of concern within the U.S.-China relationship and possible legislative solutions to address these challenges. In the district that I'm fortunate to represent in Illinois, agriculture is a vital part of our economy. We are blessed to have some of the most fertile farmland in the entire world. According to the latest data, my district is the 10th largest district in the country for corn and soybean production. Given that 95% of the world's consumers are located outside of the United States, trade is very important to farmers and agribusiness in Illinois. It is imperative that we can seamlessly transport and sell our products all around the globe. I was also proud to work with President Trump and his trade ambassador, Bob Lighthizer, to support their efforts to secure the Phase 1 deal with China. While the Phase 1 deal put forth a substantial purchase agreement for corn and soybean farmers, we must ensure China is held accountable to fulfill their purchase commitments and not distort global markets with unfair trade practices moving forward. I also recently joined my Ways and Means colleague, Congresswoman Carol Miller of West Virginia, to introduce the U.S. Trade Relationship in the Indo-Pacific and China Act. Our bill would provide a blueprint for Congress and the administration to advance U.S. trade relationships in the Indo-Pacific region through the encouragement of swift passage of the Trade Promotion Authority, also known as TPA, and directing the administration to make efforts to lead and modernize key bilateral and multilateral trade agreements in the region. The bill also directs the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative to articulate a long-term trade plan with China as the initial Phase 1 agreement ends. Ensuring strict enforcement of the Phase 1 deal will help determine if there are any future opportunities for trade and related issues. While China continues to promote harmful domestic and international trade priorities, it remains one of the largest economies in the world. China must work to adopt international economic and trade norm standards and play by the rules. I will continue to remain vigilant that any possible engagement on China puts the United States first, protects our national security interests, and supports U.S. consumers, our farmers, and our economy. Again, I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you virtually, and I hope all find this roundtable to be productive, informative, and helpful. Thank you.
So we are so very, very grateful to Congressman Lahood for taking the time to prepare those remarks and to share them with us. We approach Dr. Borlaug's 108th anniversary of his birth. I had the great privilege to work with him for a decade. I also worked with Professor Yuan Longping. I was vice chairman of his International Rice Development Forum, and I was so sad when he passed away last year. But he and Dr. Borlaug had a common focus and interest and belief that together they could help uplift Africa. And so there's one other Iowa connection in this, and that is to the 2017 World Food Prize laureate, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, the president of the African Development Bank. Today, he gave an interview to the Daily Telegraph in London, pointing out that how the conflict in Ukraine, how it could affect so dramatically the world, but particularly Africa. And he has a program to now for $1 billion to try to uplift 200 million people out of hunger and to increase wheat production in Africa. And this would be an exceptional opportunity for China and the US to work together to produce peace through agriculture. So with that final thought, I now want to turn the program over to Director General Shen Xin, who is the Director General of the Department of American and Oceanic Affairs at the Chinese People's Association for Friendship with Foreign Countries. Director General, over to you.
也感谢米德韦代办对坠机事件的致的慰问。刚才呢，中美主旨演讲嘉宾表达了对中美农业合作的重视和期待，也谈到了对中美第一阶段经贸协议的一些看法。那么众所周知呢，现行的国际贸易规则是美国等8大国家主导，用英语写成的。中美第一阶段的经贸协议是基于相互尊重、互利共赢的原则达成的，既有利于美国，也有利于中国和整个世界。中国呢是一个非常信守诺言的国家，已经同世界各国建立了良好的贸易关系，也成为了120多个国家和地区最大的贸易伙伴。我们非常高兴地看到，2021年中美的双边贸易已经超过了7500亿美元，同比增长了28.7%。如果中美落实第一阶段的经贸协议存在问题的话，我相信责任呢也不在中方这一面。我们也希望呢，美方能够为落实第一阶段的经贸协议呢，创造有利的氛围和条件。那么开幕式的所有致辞呢，到这儿就结束了。下面呢，我们将进入省州和企业代表的对话环节。首先有请美国乳品出口协会的首席执行官哈登先生发言。哈登先生。
Ms. Krista Harden?
Yes, I'm sorry. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Good day to colleagues in the US. Ambassador Quinn, it's wonderful to see your face and to be a part of this program with you. I miss you, so this is quite an honor to be involved with you, and also Governor Holden, thank you for the invitation, and the others and my other colleagues and former colleagues and friends. It is always good to be able to come together to talk about the issues between our two countries, especially those that involve something so special, like talking about food and agriculture and the things we have in common and the ways that we should be building our relationships, firming up our relationships. I think both countries have a lot to gain from these relationships, and one that I certainly believe in, and I can assure you that the U.S. dairy industry does as well. I'm very honored to serve as the president and CEO of the U.S. Dairy Export Council. I'm very honored to be able to follow my former boss, who is now again Secretary at USDA, Tom Vilsack. I also worked with him at USDA during the Obama administration, and very pleased he is back where he is because he knows these issues. He cares about these issues. And certainly, as you heard from the Deputy Undersecretary, he's very committed to finding solutions so our relationships can only be strengthened. But he also left a very strong legacy at the U.S. Dairy Export Council that I'm happy to carry on. Looking to growing exports and the relationship between the U.S. dairy industry and the Chinese people. We are excited about the relationship we have today, but believe it has great opportunity for further development, for expanding our list of products that are shared with the Chinese people and that are so important to a healthy diet, a nutritious diet. So many ways to help. Just as it has U.S. citizens, we believe that dairy can be a major part of the diet of the Chinese people. And we'd love to be, as I like to say, that source of choice for dairy, for your imports that when you cannot meet the demand yourselves and you're looking to other partners. We believe the U.S. certainly can do that. We can assure you there are a couple of things about the U.S. dairy industry and our products that you can always count on. First, very high quality products that are produced in a way by people in the U.S. that are very committed not only to producing a healthy products, I should say, because there's certainly many of them, components of dairy that are so critical to diet, but they're produced in a way that is good for the environment. We have a very simple saying in the U.S. when you talk about U.S. dairy, good for people, good for the planet. We take very seriously our obligations and our responsibilities to make sure that we are producing U.S. dairy and with the most utmost care for the planet, that our sustainability goals are front and center for every dairy farmer across the country. Our diversity of production is another thing you can be certain of. We have dairy in every state. We have dairy farmers that are committed to producing this very nutritious, healthy product, again, in a sustainable way. Good for people, good for planet. I think that's what you can count on in this relationship. I've been impressed with our industry from when I first joined it just a few years ago about putting these attributes front and center to every decision and our goal setting for sustainability, our commitment to research and to science, to technology and innovations, the things that make sure that we're going to be not only productive and efficient, but we're also going to look for ways to make sure that we are part of that solution for our climate, looking at methane, looking at how we handle the manure from our animals, looking at animal care itself. These are the things that we're committed to. What we would like, to see is even a closer relationship than we have today. The opportunity to work on issues, on challenges, on problems, and turn them into opportunities. We also, know that there are issues that we have to come together on. Maybe we have not as much in the past. And part of that, frankly, is the supply chain, making sure our products get to you as a customer, making sure we're working through some of these complex issues that are created because of things like COVID and the recovery from COVID and many of the issues dealing with the ports here in the US. We need to be working together to make sure that products are actually getting to customers and consumers who want them. So we're very excited. We believe it's a bright future. We believe there's a lot of opportunity between our two countries in ways that we can work together, that we can share in situations and look for solutions, look for answers together. So just in closing, I just thank you for letting me be with you. I look forward to the day when these types of meetings are actually in person, so we can talk to each other during breaks, we can get to know each other better. But in lieu of that, I want you to all know that we are committed to this market. We're committed to making it better. We're committed to making it stronger. I personally believe there is a great future for U.S. dairy in China and with the Chinese consumer. I believe they will enjoy the benefits of this great products, just as U.S. consumers have for many decades. So with that, I say thank you for including me, and I look forward to future interactions and discussions as we grow together in this endeavors. Thank you.
谢谢哈登女士。我相信随着中国现代化的不断推，中国人消费的这个乳品量将会不断的提高，也会为美国的乳品进入中国市场带来更大的机遇。下面呢，我们有请美国中国总商会芝加哥分会的会长倪平先生发言。
谢谢沈主任啊。Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and good morning to everyone in China. So this is the second year CGCC Chicago participate the U.S. China Agriculture Roundtable. I would like to express our sincere appreciation to the U.S. Heartland China Association and also Governor Holden for giving us such a great opportunity to talk about the Chinese investment in the U.S. Heartland and also share our view of the agriculture cooperation between U.S. and China. Last 12 months has not been easy. Not only many new challenges beyond the pandemic, such as inflation and global supply chain, have significantly impacted our members' business, but also what happened in the last 30 days in Europe might completely reshape our future. Fortunately, even with all of those volatility and uncertainty, the foundation for U.S.-China Agriculture Cooperation remains unchanged. China is still the largest consumer and the largest importer of agriculture products, while USA is still the largest producer and the largest exporter of the agriculture product. I think we have to admit that there are more and more voices today advocating for a wholesale decoupling between US and China. However, the strong tie between US-China through the agriculture industry, on the other hand, contemplate those movements. Just as Ambassador Chen Gang and the Acting Deputy Secretary Hifmeister just stated in their remark, US Census Bureau data shows US agriculture product export to China in 2021 hit a new high in the history, significantly toppling the previous record in 2013. So this indeed offered a great reason for optimism that by working together, we could build back beyond. Last year, CGCC did a survey among all the Chinese investment in the United States. The survey shows about 83% of those Chinese companies will either maintain or increase their investment in the USA. There are also over 200 Chinese companies in the Midwest. Many of them are in the agriculture industry, creating local jobs, investing in the local community, building the bridge of understanding between the country we came from and the country that we call home today, are the missions of each and every of our members. Let me cite what Secretary Hank Paulson just said not too long ago. Too few countries are unlearning the worst lesson of the past few years about how protectionism ultimately hurt the prosperity, how barrier to trade ultimately stifle opportunities, how restriction on capital flow ultimately scare away investors. Yes, we do have a lot of challenges, and tomorrow still could be worse. However, for the business to strive, for the community to prosper, and for our generation to live in a hopeful world, I think we have no other choice but do everything we could, just like this roundtable discussion, to promote more dialogue, more compromise, and more cooperation. So I hope every one of us here will add our own piece of brick to the bridge that could lead us to the future, not to the wall that could block our hope. And we really appreciate this opportunity. And obviously at the CGCC Chicago, we will do everything we can to help to promote the relationship. Thank you very much.
好，谢谢倪萍会长。下面呢，我们将播放美国大豆出口协会首席执行官萨特先生的视频致辞。
Hello, I'm Jim Sutter, CEO at the U.S. Soybean Export Council, or USEC, and it's my pleasure to speak with you today as a part of the U.S.-China Agricultural Roundtable. I would like to share how USEC has been collaborating in China since 1982, as well as give 3 Chinese customers the opportunity to share their perspective. First, let's get a lay of the land. China is the world leader in production of pork, eggs, and aquaculture, as well as the world leader in soy food consumption. And that makes them the #1 international customer of U.S. soy, as well as the #1 buyer of soy that trades in international markets. Now, we all live in a global village, and I am a deep believer in collaboration. So on behalf of U.S. soy farmers in the industry, I would like to affirm how proud and humbled we are by the opportunity we have had and continue to have to collaborate in and with China. The Chinese food and feed industry's strategic long-term investments in increased domestic capacity helps to provide nutritious and delicious protein to its 1.4 billion people and develop world-class infrastructure. In the past decade, the percent of undernourished people has dropped by close to 50%, from 16.2 to 8.6%. Chinese meat consumption increased 12-fold to 86.5 million tons from 1975 to 2018. China aquaculture production increased 17-fold to 42 million tons between 1980 and 2010. And all the while, USEC has built long-term relationships which we believe have helped to enable the pork, poultry, aquaculture, edible oil, and soy food sectors to deliver on China's vision for economic growth and prosperity. How have we collaborated? Well, since 1982, which incidentally was 14 years before China became a net importer of soy, we began collaborating with the local pork industry on high-protein, soy-based diets for animal feed, replacing fish meal as a pork feed ingredient. This helped overcome animal disease issues, reduce natural resource impact, and delivered increased value for the local industry. We helped local producers achieve better animal livestock performance, especially with sows, baby pigs, and chicks, as well as maximize value by introducing full-fat soybean processing technology and full-fat soybean animal meal in animal nutrition. Since 1991, we've transparently shared world-class technical expertise with the poultry sector, helping modernize feed formulations and operations. In 1993, the introduction of de-hulling technology to the crushing industry and high-protein soybean meal to the feed industry came to be referred as the triple win solution for crushers, feed millers, and animal producers. And now, before we shift sectors, let's hear from the chairman and CEO of the Yihai Carry Group.
协会的这些合作，从我们这个工厂一开始建， 就开始解禁。当初就是我们国产的那个大豆啊，以前压榨这个豆粕啊，我们只有一个规格，但是美国呢进的这种设备工艺，它能够通过脱皮以后啊，通过这种生产，你所需要的，它是给不同的这个需求的这样的客户，就是从我们的这个设备工艺，是美国人帮我们来建协会，帮我们中国的这些大豆的生产厂家，在这个产品的推广、原料的采购这方面，是做了很多工作，所以非常感谢啊，美国大豆协会，给我们在这个提供这些帮助。
Since the early 90s, we've been part of China's history of aquaculture transformation with 3 milestone initiatives. First, the introduction of floating aquafeed to feed millers and aqua farmers using extruded technology on soy-based feed ingredients. Second, the evolution from multi-species to production to the 80-20 pond aquaculture system that improved water quality and increased production efficiency. And finally, the third initiative, in 2013, we introduced the in-pond raceway system in aquaculture, or IPRS, helping Chinese producers do the following: double or triple productive capacity in the same amount of water, achieve with 0 water discharge, as all fecal matters are reused as organic fertilizer for crops. So improve the water quality, improve the fish quality with better meat texture and flavor, significantly reduce animal disease risks and medication cost, and while doing all that, achieve increased profitability. And all of this advances sustainability. Now let's hear from the technical director of the Shanghai Xingzong Group.
讲培训，让我们国内四大行业同行能够更好地掌握了这个膨化加工工艺的技术，组织我们去参加一些像到美国系大学研究所，或者是相关的企业进行参观学习交流，这提供我们很好的一个学习机会，对我们整个行业呢是非常有价值的。每年都有美国大豆协会到我们新农公司呢来参观交流，或者是了解我们上海新农公司或者上海以及华东地区大豆的使用情况，这样有别于我们美国大豆协会对大豆在中国的使用情况有一个很好的一些直观的了解，双方合作的是非常满意。
I'd now like to focus on sustainability. An increasing population and urbanization, changing climate, and rising consumer consciousness are driving demand for sustainable protein, including sustainable U.S. soy. USEC and U.S. soy farmers are committed to the UN Sustainability Development Goals and enabling China's commitments to carbon peak by 2030, carbon neutrality by 2060, as well as U.S. net zero gas emissions by 2050. U.S. soy has the lowest carbon footprint versus other origins, so we affirm the local industry's evolving efforts to source sustainable protein. Since 1980, U.S. soy farmers have reduced greenhouse gas per bushel emissions by 43%, improved irrigation water use efficiency by 60%, improved soil conservation by 34%, and increased production by 130%. Chinese companies have increased shipments of certified sustainable U.S. soy. The U.S. Sustainable Assurance Protocol, or SSAP, with transferable certificates, is enabling sustainability practices across soy user sectors. Further, the Global Seafood Alliance and USEC collaborate on the U.S. Soy Sustainability Assurance Protocol and the Global Seafood Alliance Best Aquaculture Practice, or BAP, certification. 4 Chinese aquaculture companies recently achieved U.S. SSAP Global Seafood Alliance BAP certification, with all products traceable by a QR code so consumers can confidently purchase fish knowing it was sustainably produced. We also value transparency. Over the years, several Chinese soy users have visited U.S. soy farms to experience U.S. soy's high crop quality, sustainability, and our reliability infrastructure firsthand. A record and reliable U.S. crop in 2021. It's really remarkable following hurricane damage in the Gulf of Mexico, a drought in some parts of the country, the pandemic, and weather impacts in other parts of the world. But the U.S. came through and produced a record crop. Now, before I conclude, let's hear more about collaboration from the Vice General Manager at COFCO Group.
大的出口协会把这个美国的一些农场主啊，还有一些这个出口商带过来到中国这边来跟我们进行交流。通过这种国际交流吧，促进了这个整个贸易啊、合作啊，整个这个开展的比较顺畅，或者说不断的这个进步吧。美国大豆出口协会和我们中粮以及其他的同行们，每年都参加中美的这个经贸合作，给两国的这个经贸合作做出贡献。我们非常感谢美国大豆出口协会和我们一起合作，带我们成长。我们也祝福美国大豆出口协会和我们的合作更上一层楼。
We believe and see in action that the Chinese food industry leverages innovation and collaboration to balance sustainable food production with climate action, affordable food with healthy diets, and stable food supplies with fair and open trade. Later this year, we will celebrate 40 years of U.S. soy collaborating in China with high-quality, sustainable products, technical expertise, tools, services, and collaborations. We believe all of these have helped us to create positive impacts in both of our countries. We remain committed and look forward to continuing to strengthen the China-U.S. collaboration across the soy value chain for centuries to come. Thank you very much.
谢谢萨特先生非常精彩的介绍，显示了协会与中国的这个丰富的合作，同时也显示了合作与还包括了技术的合作、服务的合作，甚至看中目标的这方面的合作。再次感谢萨特先生。那么最后由先正达集团首席执行官先生。
My name is Eric Fierwald, and I am the CEO of Syngenta Group. Our 50,000 colleagues around the world develop seeds, crop protection, nutrition products, and service solutions for farmers so they can be highly productive. We are very unique in that we are truly global, serving farmers in over 100 countries with our strongest capabilities in China and the US. So we are very pleased to be part of this critical roundtable. The China-US relationship is by far the most important bilateral relationship in the world, and I believe a strong partnership in agriculture forms critical bridges between our great countries, so we can work together to ensure food security and tackle climate change. China and the US accounted for nearly half of our $26 billion in sales last year, and together grew over 30% as farmers in both countries adopted our high-quality, sustainable solutions, which have never been more important for both food security and helping address climate change. The United Nations estimates that we must produce 50% more food by 2050. At the same time, we need to take 12% of the greenhouse gas emissions from agriculture and reduce this to zero. At Syngenta Group, we are working to help farmers do this by putting regenerative agriculture at the heart of what we do. Regenerative agriculture means products and practices that improve soil health, farm productivity, biodiversity, and go towards carbon neutral. We have established a global network of more than 4,000 benchmark farms that are adopting this approach. Our benchmark farms across China, the US, and other countries have seen a 15% yield increase, a 46% reduction in fertilizer use, a 33% decrease in pesticide use, and 37% drop in greenhouse gas emissions. And we are always getting better. Syngenta Group is investing $2 billion a year in research and development to create better technology solutions. Let me give you 2 examples with corn, the #1 crop in the world. We have developed a corn seed for animal feed called Enogen that cows better digest, so they need 5% less feed and emit 10% less methane, greatly reducing greenhouse gases. Another example is our artesian corn seed that survives drought better and delivers 12% higher yields. Syngenta was purchased by Sinochem in 2016. Since then, we have invested billions of dollars in both China and US agriculture to benefit farmers in both countries. One example of how we bring our sustainable solutions to farmers is our new innovative business model called MAP, or Modern Agriculture Platform. It was the vision of our chairman, Frank Ning. We have built 500 MAP centers across China so far, and this number continues to grow fast. They enable farmers to leapfrog from outdated practices to leading-edge modern techniques. Farmers using the MAP services see dramatic improvements in yields and quality while emitting far less greenhouse gases and using far less fertilizer and pesticides. MAP-supported farmer incomes have also greatly increased. And we are now putting our MAP Beside logo on consumer food products along with a QR code. When consumers scan the QR code, they get a picture of the farmer that grew their food, and they get sustainability data. This is the most advanced food system approach in the world, supported by Syngenta's global capabilities and incredible digital advancements in China. I close by saying that making sure everyone in the world has enough food to eat while tackling climate change is a huge challenge. But we can do it if we work together across the US and China and with others. It is an area where our 2 countries are united and should be a solid foundation for building strong relationships in other areas. I spent a lot of time in both countries. Last year, I spent over 3 months in China. The people of both countries are wonderful, and our desires for a safe, harmonious, profitable world for everyone are well aligned. Let's have agriculture help bring us more together. I wish you all the best for the dialogues over the coming weeks. Thank you, and 谢谢。
谢谢傅文德先生的致辞。下面呢，我把交给我们中国协会。
Thank you, Director Shen, for the excellent moderation of the program so far. One key ties between you and China are between the state and province. So we're very honored today. We have 4 state and provincial leaders joining us today, and we will be playing the pre-recorded remarks from Secretary of Agriculture, Blaine Arthur. Then we'll hear from Director General of Department of Agriculture Rural Affairs of Hubei Province, Mr. Xiang Keqiang. And then we'll hear from Secretary of Agriculture of Kansas, Ms. Mike Bean, as well as from Henan Province, Deputy Director General of Department of Agriculture Rural Affairs, Mr. Yang Yupu. So first, let's play the remarks from Secretary Arthur.
Hi, I'm Blaine Arthur, the Oklahoma Secretary of Agriculture. Certainly glad to have an opportunity to share a few comments with you this evening. Oklahoma is an incredibly diverse ag state. Here in Oklahoma, we're #2 in beef cattle production. We're also in the top 10 in pork production and poultry production. For a small geographic state, we have a lot of diversity on the crops that are grown and produced here. We're also #3 in cotton production, which is in the southwestern part of our state. lots of producers with lots of diverse ag. And because of that, we're always looking for ways to access international opportunities for the food and fiber that we produce here in the state of Oklahoma. There's tremendous opportunities for our producers, everything from wheat, cattle, and soybeans. And we look for ways to develop partnerships and relationships with countries across the world. Here in Oklahoma, we've also had a lot of success with our Made in Oklahoma companies. And these companies are producing everything from food and beverages to other products that are really desired in other countries across the world. And we have a team here that works on international marketing and getting access to markets for these great Made in Oklahoma products. We believe that having as many conversations as we can with our partners around the world is good for everyone involved. And certainly we're always working to promote our products here from the state of Oklahoma. So we appreciate the opportunity to share with you this evening and look forward to opportunities to expand our exports into other countries.
Thank you. Thank you for the remarks from Secretary of Agriculture, Oklahoma. Next, I would like to welcome Deputy Director General of Hubei Provincial Department of Agriculture and Rural Affairs, Ms. Xiang Keqiang.
好，尊敬的各位女士们、先生们，大家晚上好。在这春暖花开的阳春3月，非常荣幸参加中美农业圆桌论坛开幕式。在此，我谨代表湖北省农业农村厅对论坛的成功主办表示热烈的祝贺，向长期以来关心支持湖北三农工作的各位中外友人致以崇高的敬意和衷心的感谢。湖北位居中国中部，长江中游，是传统的农业大省，素有湖广熟、天下走的美誉。全省粮食产量连续9年稳定在500亿斤以上，淡水产品产量连续26年位居全国第一。鲜蛋、蜂蜜、食用菌、淡水小龙虾的出口多年位居全国第一，是国际国内重要农产品的生产基地。湖北也是农业科教大省，华中农业大学、武汉大学生物学院、长江大学等院校久负盛名。在湖北的国家级农业科研机构有7所，省市州级农业科研机构有17所，有这个农业科研人员5000多人，其中中国科学院、中国工程院院士有14位。一直以来，湖北始终坚持同世界上一切友好的地区和国家扩大开放，加强合作。目前，我们已经与世界40多个国家的25个省、州、大区、县、68个城市建立了93的友好城市关系，如160多个国家和地区开展了经贸往来。2021年，湖北农产品出口总额达到了27.3亿美元，创历史新高。早在1979年和1985年，我们就先后同美国、俄亥俄州、亚拉巴马州建立了友好省州关系，并广泛开展深度合作，特别是与俄亥俄州农业部等机构签署的农业合作备忘录，促进了双方在畜牧业、农业机械、车头、配方施肥、农产品贸易等方面的交流与合作。如亚拉巴马州 澳本大学开展科研合作，双方在武汉共建澳本园，在果蔬、茶叶、育种、栽培及精深加工等方面取得了丰硕成果。农业对外合作已经成为河北扩大开放的一支重要生力军。3月18日，中国国家主席习近平同美国总统拜登再次举行了视频通话，双方都表示要进一步加强交流、加强合作。我们了解到，今天参会的乌克兰荷马州有18万平方公里，与湖北面积几乎相当。堪萨斯州位于美国的正中心，与湖北的地理位置相仿，两地农业发达，与湖北的有很强的合作潜力。我们也愿与乌克兰荷马州、堪萨斯州及美国腹地其他地区在农业科技人员交流、农产品出厂、质量检测以及精深加工、奶牛胚胎移植、节水农业等多个方面进一步加强合作，实现互利共赢。春天是孕育希望的季节，我们相信通过中美农业圆桌论坛等系列活动，湖北与美国腹地的合作将会收获成功的喜悦。最后，祝中美农业圆桌论坛取得圆满成功，祝各位中外友人工作顺利，家庭幸福，万事如意。谢谢大家。
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Jiang, for your remarks. Next, we have from the state of Kansas, agriculture power state from the Heartland region, Secretary of Agriculture, Mike Bean. Please, Mr. Bean.
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. The United States trade and economic agreement with China has proven to be mutually beneficial the past 2 years, especially to the livestock producers and farmers of Kansas. On the animal protein front, Phase 1 gave U.S. beef meaningful access to Chinese market for the first time. Kansas exported more than $281 million in meat and edible offal to China in 2020 and 2021. Phase 1 also helped open the door for enormous grain and oilseed sales. Kansas exported more than $736 million in cereals and oilseeds to China in 2020 and 2021. The U.S. Grain Council says that China has purchased more U.S. corn in the last year than any other country in history. I'm pleased to mention that Kansas has worked with partners such as the U.S. Meat Export Federation and the U.S. Grain Council, as well as state and national commodity groups in China to develop strong relationships with customers of our agricultural products in China. One exciting example is our sister state relationship with Hunan. Kansas and Hunan have been exploring direct containerized grain shipments for decades, and we are proud to announce that the first direct shipment of containerized Kansas soybeans was successfully sent to a buyer in Hunan a few months after celebrating the 40th year of our sister state relationship in 2021. Direct shipments of containerized soybeans from Kansas to Hunan have now become routine. We hope to continue fostering these relationships and engage in programming to help both countries expand our mutually beneficial partnerships. We encourage our U.S. trade representative to continue working with China on the thorns that still exist in our trading relationship. Maintaining a strong commercial relationship with the U.S. is in the interest of both countries and will serve as a foundation as the two countries continue to build bilateral ties. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Bean, for your remarks. And I want to mention at the end of the program to demonstrate the deep friendship between our people. We actually have the Muscatine High School choir performing a friendship song at the very end of the program. So again, thank you, Secretary Bean, for bringing the warm greetings and your remarks from Kansas. And next we have Deputy Director General of Henan Province of Department of Agriculture and Rural Affairs, Mr. Yang Yupu. Please.
各位女士、先生们，大家好，我是河南省农业农村厅总农艺师杨玉甫。今天非常高兴参加这个活动并做发言，很荣幸给大家介绍我们河南省的有关情况。我们河南呢是中国重要的农业大省、畜牧业大省、农产品加工业大省和物流大省。 同时呢，也是人口大省、劳动力大省。可以说，我们河南农业的主要特点呢，可以简要的概括为4个大，就是大粮仓、大厨房、大餐桌、大市场。大粮仓，河南用中国1/16的土地生产了1/10的粮食。 1/4强的小麦，全省的粮食产量连续4年超过了6500万吨，是中国的产粮第2大省，也是名副其实的中原粮仓。河南的优质小麦种植面积也是全国第1的，还有我们中国的花生之乡也在河南正阳县。 我们的国酒茅台集团在河南还建立了有机小麦原料基地，标准化生产和产地追溯体系我们也日益完善。我们的香菇产量占到全国的1/3强，我们的大蒜、辣椒等多个农产品入选了中欧地理标志协定的保护目录。我们不仅有了中国的护照，而且还有欧盟的签证。 大厨房，河南呢有5大优势产业：面、肉、油、乳制品和果蔬，品种繁多。我们生产了全国1/2的火腿肠和1/3的方便面，1/4的馒头，3/5的汤圆和7/10的水饺。特别是双汇集团，也是全球 规模最大、布局最广、产业链最完善的肉类屠宰加工产业化企业，也是我们中美农业合作的典范企业。还有思念速冻食品，荣获了是中国最具价值的品牌，当然在美国也有生产和加工。河南的油料、食用菌产量位居全国第1位。 蔬菜的种植面积和产量也是全国前列。2021年啊，全省畜牧业的产值超过了460亿美元，连续多年位居全国前2位。肉、蛋和乳制品的加工能力也是位居全国前茅。大餐桌，河南的粮食之外，河南的菜篮子产品也是品种多样。 肉、蛋、奶、菜、茶以及五谷杂粮啊等等品种繁多，市场供应十分丰富。比如我们的苹果，我们的灵宝苹果通过了 HACCP 还有 BRC 的欧美的认证，被称为是亚洲第1高山果园。华英农业呢等5家企业啊也入选了中国农业农村部 首批的农产品国际贸易高质量发展的基地。好想你用1颗红枣闯出了一个品牌，它的年收入已经超过了6亿美元。还有卫龙集团做成了网红的美食，畅销海内外。可以说我们的餐桌产品越来越时尚。 河南是大市场。河南有1亿多人口，河南的 GDP 啊，连续多年位居全国的第5位，市场需求和消费潜力巨大。我们的万邦国际也是中国最大的农产品批发、集散、物流企业，它的年营业额超过了150亿美元。它的产品，它的经营的品种来自世界各地，超过了70多个国家。郑州商品交易所是中国中西部唯一的一个期货交易所，小麦、油菜、花生、白糖等重要的农产品交易都集中在这个交易所，吸引了正大集团、益海嘉里、中粮等众多的世界知名的企业在河南投资创业。河南的省会啊，郑州啊，也是中国重要的交通枢纽和国家中心城市。郑州机场的国际邮轮的国际邮货啊吞吐量已经连续5年位居的全国的第5位，也是全球货运机场的40强。美国是世界上重要的发达的经济体，也是农业生产高度现代化的国家，在种植、养殖、种子研发、绿色生态以及乡村治理等等领域啊，有着明显的优势。我们河南呢，当前也正在加快建设现代农业强省，推动农业高质量发展和乡村振兴战略。可以说，与美国农业在各个领域都有着广阔的合作空间。我们特别真诚的希望能够通过这次活动啊，进一步加深我们的了解，不断加强中美之间的贸易合作和技术交流，特别是不断的深化促进中美农业合作。也祝愿中美农业圆桌论坛圆满成功，祝各位身体健康，万事如意。谢谢大家。
Thank you, Mr. Yang, for your remarks, and thank all the provincial and state leaders for joining us today. And next, we'll very quickly share what is coming up in the next 3 weeks. And as you heard throughout all the discussions, great anticipation of more dialogue. So one of the first dialogue is actually happening later this week and is the US-China. So we have the first one, Ag SME Showcase and Dialogue, then Agriculture Education Dialogue, and Think Tank Dialogue. So we will be seeing top companies from both US and China presenting later this week. And then a week from this Thursday, we will see education leaders from both US and China discussing food system transformation and climate change. Then finally, at the Think Tank Dialogue, we have gathered some of the best experts from both US and China to discuss rural prosperity and climate change. So I hope you can all join us for those dialogues later. And in closing, we want to thank all the partners and all the supporting organizations. But finally, to send everyone off, we'd like to share with you the Muscatine, Iowa High School Choir, the friendship song they sent to us as a gift to this event.
Ni 是不会忘记，我们曾在小镇相遇。虽然岁月已逝去，却不能抹去记忆。
you, everyone. That officially concludes our opening celebration today. And thank you, our friends in China. Have a wonderful day. And thank you, our friends in America. Have a good evening. See you next time. Bye-bye.